Hey y'all, welcome to the Southern Appalachian Herbal Podcast. I'm Judson Carroll and I'm an herbalist. I'm also a wild crafter, a gardener, and herb grower. I'm coming to you from high atop the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, just a stone's throw from the Tennessee line, overlooking the Pisgah National Forest. Absolutely surrounded by the bounty of God's green earth. I spent most of my life wandering these mountains and learning about plants from the old-timers and all sorts of characters. On this show, we'll talk about herbs and how to use them, how to find them, how to grow them, how to make preparations. We'll talk about a lot of things. We can also talk about permaculture, homesteading, foraging, and living off the land. Most anything, really. You can email me at southernappalachianherbs@gmail.com if you have a question or a comment. You can also contact me through the Grow Network, where I'm a regular contributor and a moderator for the forums. And my blog is, of course, southernappalachianherbs@blogspot.com. All right, y'all. I'm going to sit my guitar down and let's talk about herbs.
Hey y'all, welcome to this week's show. Today we're going to get into one of the lesser known eupatoriums. Eupatoriums, well, they're herbs that herbalists use like constantly. I mean, these are like our go-to herbs often for viruses, colds, flus, and such as that. Going to get into one that's considered a weed. Can actually discuss several of the lesser known eupatoriums, but this one's called dog fennel. And just considered a weed in America, actually does have some good medicinal use. So we're going to get into that. And before we do, let's talk about our foraging for the week, our recipes here. You know, the spring foraging cookbook. I think you're going to have a lot of fun with it. In about a month. It's February now. Depending on where you are, you may be looking at, what is it the groundhog always says, 6 more weeks of winter or whatever. You may be looking at a lot more winter depending on where you are. I mean, in Linville up around, 5,000 feet elevation. Our last frost date is like May 1, first week of May, really. But, in April, especially always around Easter, the trilliums and the ramps and with various ones are coming in. I won't try to list them all, but if you're in a warmer climate, I remember what brought this to mind is when I went to school in Georgia. I went to the University of Georgia, and February was when the daffodils started coming up. I could go home up to the mountains of North Carolina, and there'd be 3 feet of snow on the ground, and it'd be 20 below, and the wind would just be howling. And I'd go down, and about the time I got down toward around Commerce, Georgia, all the daffodils were coming up. It was like a completely different world. And actually, I really miss a lot about living in Georgia, a lot, actually. But every place has its trade-offs. Georgia's also ridiculously hot in the summer. I mean, ridiculously hot and buggy. So, at least in the mountains of North Carolina, we have no poisonous snakes, except occasionally when the state governor, I think it was the federal government, probably, 15 years ago, decided to release 10,000 rattlesnakes on our public trails, especially the horse trails. Yeah, that's a good idea, right? They said rattlesnakes were an endangered species, so they decided to repopulate our walking trails, our hiking trails, and horseback riding trails with venomous rattlesnakes. Not taking into account that rattlesnakes actually don't live at this elevation because the winter's so cold it kills them. So I don't know how many millions of dollars of taxpayer money they spent dumping poisonous snakes all over the place in the summertime when the tourists were on the trails and the snakes could bite people. But all those snakes were dead by the next spring. So, your government at work, folks. Anyway, let's get on with the plant, the forage plant. It's an herb, it's a weed, it's whatever you want to call it. It's a wild edible plant But like I was saying, I think you're going to have a lot of fun with this book. If you don't have a copy yet, be sure to get one by spring in your area. And every day, I would really like for you to have it early in the season because the easiest time to identify plants is when they're coming in. And right now everything's dead, barren winter, right? The only thing popping up are a few, ferns. Ferns stay green through the winter, and I don't know, club moss I can see out there. If I look around enough, I can find some wintergreen. I know where a patch is, but it's under the snow. I mean, and under the leaves and everything. Everything's gray and brown and dead right now, right? So those first plants that start coming up in the spring really stand out. And if you know what you're looking for, as far as whether it's foraging plants for food or it's medicinal herbs, that's really the best time because you don't like miss it. Like, you can't see the forest for the trees. I mean, by summertime around here, every square foot of ground is going to have like 57 different plants growing on it, all in a big tangled mass. If it's in the sunlight. If it's in the woods, yeah, then things are more sparse. But I mean, it can really get pretty thick in the woods too. Yeah, definitely. Really, when things are coming in the spring, that's the time you can look and say, hey, what's that plant? Let me go get my, phone if I've got a plant ID app. Let me go get my field guides and let me identify that plant. And as they come in, if you start that, as soon as little green things start popping up, by summertime, you will have identified pretty much everything in your yard or in your little area, your little walking path where you walk your dog every day, or whatever your routine is. It's really the best way to start identifying plants is to start in early spring. And this one, I think I probably live at the furthest southern tip of this plant's growth habitat. That would be this plant's habitat. If you live further north, you probably have it. If you live further south than me, you probably don't have it. So I may give you two today. This is large leaf aster. Like I said, it is more of a northern plant. Folks around here, none of the people I learned about foraging from had ever heard of eating this plant. I found it in a field guide, probably Peterson, and identified it. Hey, another plant I can eat, right? I think most asters have some edibility to them, but this one definitely does. Now, maybe I shouldn't say that. I have not looked into all asters. The Asteraceae family is quite large. We're talking, daisies and such. But they tend to be bitter, and this is one that, pretty good actually. And I do, it was Peterson that I found that in, and nobody else is looking for it. So when I find a patch, I kind of get as much as I want. So the leaves really make an interesting addition to soup. This is one I would add to like an Asian style soup. To me, it just kind of has that flavor. So what I do with my Asian style soup is I'll just take some chicken broth, nice, clear chicken broth, some water. I boiled a chicken in. That's what I mean by chicken broth. I will put into there, some garlic and green onions, some ginger, some mushrooms. Kind of tastes like, wonton soup. A little soy sauce, you're pretty much good to go. Maybe a few drops of fish sauce if you want to get a little funky with it. A little crushed red pepper. I always think a little hot pepper is really good in just about everything, actually. But this is one of the greens I will add to that soup. Edible chrysanthemum would be another one. Beefsteak plant, shiso. What is that? We'll get to it another time, but it's a really common weed. Perilla. Yeah, perilla. That very common weed in North America, grows all over the place. Considered one of the choice edible vegetables in many Asian countries, particularly popular in Japan, Korea. I know the Koreans, when I go to an Asian grocery store, I usually find it in the Korean section. So let's just say I've just got this basic broth, right? I boil my chicken until like the cartilage starts to break down. You get a little bit of nice gelatin in there. I've skimmed the fat off of the soup. I've got a nice clear broth. I've added in some onions, some green onions. Ramps would be my choice, but of course anything from chives to just scallions, you know. Garlic, definitely. Ginger, mushrooms, hot peppers. A little bit of soy sauce. This is salt and pepper. This is looking and smelling basically like wonton soup without the wonton. Then I just go into the backyard or I go for a little walk with the dog and I come back with whatever I want to add to this soup. It's really good. This is one of those things I pretty much keep going like all the time. And a lot of times I'll have it for breakfast. So, I mean, you throw any fresh herbs in there. You can throw any wild greens you like to put in there, like some that are like slightly bitter, so maybe some mustard greens, dandelion leaves, little turmeric is nice. Sometimes that's a little too heavy, but of course, you know, turmeric's good for inflammation, good for the immune system. So sometimes I put it in there. I like the dark mushroom soy sauce. You know, it's just what do I call it? It's like round eye Chinese soup. You know, I also make a noodle dish. I call it round eye lo mein. Basically the same ingredients, but it's one of those just kind of whatever you want to throw in there. You can throw in some egg noodles. You can throw in some rice noodles. You can chop some turnip or radish root. Looks real fancy, you know, but it's just super easy and nice to have on hand. Um, yeah, I mean, I like soup for breakfast. Actually, I like soup with lunch with a salad. It's nice. A good variation would be to use fish broth or fish stock instead of chicken. Just save your fish heads and bones, boil them up, and to that I would definitely add a little Asian fish sauce, a little Thai fish sauce or something. Red Boat's a very good brand. That's strong stuff. That is. Fish sauce is good. It adds a unique flavor. You'll miss it if it's not there. Just go real light on it. Because, I mean, literally, what would it say? Okay, if you open a thing of fish sauce and smell it, it basically smells like butt. Okay, I'm just kidding. I'm just telling you straight out. The stuff stinks. Don't add too much of it. If you add too much, it's going to taste like rotten fish. All fish sauce is literally fish salted, allowed to ferment. That may sound crazy, but has been a favorite flavoring in Asian cultures for thousands of years. It was a popular condiment in ancient Rome. It was called garum. Apicius, he put garum in just about all his recipes, and it is really actually very good used in very small amounts. Now, if you still think it's weird, you know, Worcester sauce is basically a fish sauce. It's an anchovy-based sauce, so it's not as weird as it seems. It's just go lightly on it. You know, you could certainly make a pork stock, save some pork bones. That's going to work really well with this as well. And as far as medicinal use, big leaf aster, the roots have been used as a blood tonic. You know, so people used to believe it would strengthen and purify the blood, boost the immune system. Infusion actually used in like a tea, basically made out of the root, a decoction essentially. Take a cloth, put it on your head, and it's supposed to help with headaches. So it's supposed to be very good for headaches actually. And a compound decoction of the root has been used as a laxative and in the treatment of venereal disease. A lot of your asters have medicinal properties. Now, since you may not live where you can find the big leaf aster, I'm going to throw just one more in there. We'll do basswood or linden. I have done a whole show on the medicinal properties of linden. Linden, basswood, in Europe they call it lime tree. It's not lime the citrus, it's basswood. In the mountains where I live they call it the bee tree. And it's called bee tree because it is like the favorite of bees, honeybees. You can actually find a linden or basswood tree by listening for the bees in spring, early summer, more like mid-spring. Those flowers are very popular as an herbal tea, so they're relaxing. The buds can actually be used like a cooked vegetable. Now the thing is, and you can make fritters out of the flowers and all that. We'll get into that in just a second. But don't take too many of those flowers. Now, if it's a big tree, it's just covered in it. Don't worry. Grab what you want, basically. But remember, the honeybees are having a very hard time probably because of stuff like Roundup and such, and pesticides, which are weakening the colonies, and we're having whole hives die off because the bees their immune systems are bad, and they're weakened, and what would normally be like a little virus or bacteria or whatever that they could fight off is killing whole colonies of bees. And this is even more true among the wild bees, not the honey bees, the native bees from North America, carpenter bees and mason bees and the bees that live under the ground and everything. If we lose the bees, we have no food. We need the bees to pollinate our food. So whenever you're taking something like linden blossoms that the bees really rely on for the nectar to make their honey, do be careful. They're, probably out of this book, that's the main one I would warn against. I can't think of any other flower that the bees really go crazy over. In fact, the only thing I can really remember bees swarming around other than linden trees is holly bushes and holly trees. They go crazy over holly flowers. Holly's not edible at all. It does have some medicinal uses, so we don't even have to worry about that. You can make a very good linden flower syrup by combining equal parts linden flower and sugar, plus or minus to taste, with water and lemon juice, and just boil it down as thick as you want. You can make it as thick as a pancake syrup or even honey, or you could actually just boil it up and let it cool and add some yeast to make a linden flower wine. Let it ferment. Super easy stuff, super tasty. Like I said, the flowers can be basically dipped in a pancake batter and deep fried. That's a favorite way that people like to eat them. Medicinally, the herb is sedative. If you have an herbal tea of linden or lime flowers or basswood, whatever, it is relaxing. The Mexican and European varieties tend to be much more potent. Linden is known to lower blood pressure and heart rate, help with sleep and stress, and reduce inflammation. It's actually one of our most powerful anti-inflammants. In fact, Susan Weed says that linden is more effective as an anti-inflammant for people of Anglo-Saxon and Celtic heritage than turmeric. So if you've tried turmeric for arthritis or whatever and it didn't really do anything for you, try the linden flowers. And, in a couple of months, you can walk out in the woods and cup your hand behind your ear, and if you hear bees humming, they're probably either on a linden tree or on a holly tree. Either way, good to spot. Like I said, holly does have some very limited use. Both are excellent woods for carving. Basswood is by far the easiest wood with a nice fine grain. Everybody likes to carve basswood. I actually really like holly. Holly has a very tight grain, very smooth, color of ivory. It has like no grain pattern whatsoever. I've still got a few nice holly wood spoons on my site if you want to take a look at it. If you want to buy some, they're for sale. And anyway, that's Judson Carroll Woodcraft.substack.com. And you can see the holly is just ivory. I mean, it's strikingly beautiful, in my opinion. It does not have a discernible grain pattern whatsoever. Now, this is what's so cool, though. If you hold it up to the light, and it will catch that just very fine. It looks like satin. It's like a satiny pattern in there. I think holly is it's strong. It's flexible. It's really pretty. To me, it's one of the finest woods for making wooden spoons and forks and butter knives and things you're actually going to use. Whereas basswood isn't. It's good, but it's not as strong. It's not as flexible. The holly is, to me, a far superior wood for actually making things you're going to use, utensils. So now let's get on to the herb of the day. And as I said, this is a lesser known eupatorium. It is called dog fennel or thoroughwort. Now, I thought Miss Grieve she had a very good statement on the eupatorium. She said, and she said, the eupatoriums are some of the most important plants used in herbal medicine. Boneset, hemp agrimony, gravel root will be found under their specific names. It's in her book. These are plants that are strongly antiviral and very good for fevers. She lists, she says the following species are not so well known in Great Britain, though they are familiar plants in different parts of America and Brazil. Yes, we have very many eupatoriums. Let's see, there was Eupatorium tetrafolium. This one's actually called wild horehound, and it was one identified by Andre Michaud. Michaud, the great botanist who spent so much time literally in my backyard. He cataloged the plants around Grandfather Mountain, North Carolina, and, well, many places. I mean, from upstate New York, I think he went down to South Carolina, but he spent a ton of time up here around Grandfather and Mount Mitchell and Roan Mountain. It has small white flower heads and abounds in the southern United States and has similar, though less powerful properties than E. perfoliatum, which is bone set. So, see, that's what they call the wild horehound. I was unsure about this until I actually did the research on this book. I knew bone set. I actually, one of the first herbs I learned to identify. And it's one of our best. I mean, especially in like when COVID's going around and the flus and such, you want to know where the bone set is. Bone set's so named because there was an epidemic that came through America in the colonial times known as break bone fever. The fevers were so intense you felt like your bones were breaking. And bone set, or eupatorium, was well, it probably saved early America from being wiped out by this epidemic. Ditto Joe Pyeweed, which was used for another epidemic that has an interesting story. I've done a whole show on that one too. Joe Pye was either a Native American medicine man or he was, an Old West cowboy performer. Anyway, nobody knows. They're different stories. Either the white guy learned it from the Indians, or the Indians gave it to the white folks to help with this epidemic, because it literally, once again, saved America from being wiped out by, who knows exactly what it was. Could have been yellow fever. It was some kind of serious epidemic. And that's when the eupatoriums really became famous. And until the Pure Foods and Drugs Act, sometime after 1919, any cold remedy you bought from your, general store, they were patent medicine, would have been largely based on at least one of the eupatoriums. So this wild horehound, or Eupatorium tetrafolium, Teucrifolium, can be used interchangeably with bone set, but isn't quite as strong. That's good to know, because the stuff literally grows everywhere around here. She said the whole herb is employed, and both this and preceding species were formerly included in the secondary list of the Materia Medica of the United States, meaning this, bone set and this other one that's very similar to it were once official medicine. Your doctor would have prescribed this for you. Another one is Eupatorium agaratoides. I don't know. It's white snakeroot, and that one is actually far more known to me. I've written quite a bit on the snake roots. So many plants are called snake root. This is one of the main ones. It is antispasmodic, diuretic, and diaphoretic. But it apparently can cause a disease in cattle called the trembles. So some people have tried to, they try to keep it away from their pastures. She also mentions that another Eupatorium, Eupatorium urticacifolium, that's one that actually looks like nettles, by the way, is poisonous to livestock. So these don't always go well with cattle. But for humans, for medicinal use, we need to know about these. They're some of our most important herbs. There is Eupatorium aromaticum and Eupatorium incarnatum. There are also American species which have gained much reputation in diseases connected with inflammation and irritability of the bladder. They are said to contain a principle similar to, if not identical to, coumarin, which is obtained from the tonka bean, and are actually used at this point in time, in the 1930s, they were using Eupatorium incarnatum for that reason to flavor tobacco, to give it a vanilla type of flavoring. We've talked a lot about that with sweet woodruff. If you want to reference my show on sweet woodruff, I told you about it's illegal to buy and sell and use the tonka bean in the United States because it contains vanilla, just like the vanilla bean does. And the companies that control the growing and sale of vanilla got the tonka bean made illegal. They put some money in the right congressman's hands, and the tonka bean, which is a lot cheaper and easier to grow, is actually illegal. Well, Eupatorium aromaticum, or maybe that was incarnatum. Yeah, no, it was incarnatum. Eupatorium incarnatum, also known as Texan mata. I don't know. I'm not familiar with that common name. Also has coumarin. Coumarin is the smell of like wet hay. So if you kind of think, you can see how that could be used as a vanilla substitute. It is a blood thinner, but it's not Coumadin. Coumadin is the chemical, the test tube version of coumarin, which is generally considered safe. But if you were on blood thinners, you'd want to be careful with it. There's Eupatorium iapana. That's a Brazilian species. It's an aromatic bitter and has febrifuge properties like E. perfoliatum, like boneset. So that's another one that could be used as boneset. It's very good for fevers. It's considered a sure remedy, and if timely used, is an antidote for the effects of the bites of poisonous reptiles and insects. It is regarded as the most powerful species of the genus, but has fallen into neglect, though is still occasionally met with in European commerce. Eupatorium funiculum, Eupatorium eoclopsis, and Hyssopifolium, so it has leaves like a hyssop, are considered to be antidotes for the poisonous bites of reptiles and stings of insects. Eupatorium nervosum, a Jamaican species known as bitterbush, is regarded as very efficacious in cholera, also in typhus and typhoid fevers and smallpox. Another Jamaican species, Eupatorium villosum, also known locally as bitterbush, is used in the preparation of beer. So it was used in place of hops as a bittering agent and as a stimulant in low zymotic diseases. Eupatorium rotundifolium, that one grows sometimes around here, a native of New England and Virginia, so yes, it comes into my range, has been considered a palliative in consumption, and it helped ease the symptoms of tuberculosis. And Eupatorium calinum is included in the Mexican pharmacopoeia, for its properties similar to that of perfoliatum or boneset. The leaves of Eupatorium glutinosum, also known as Larmark, constitute one of the substances known as Matico in South America, the latter name, however, belonging by right to the Herba Matico, an infusion which is recognized as styptic to staunch bleeding of wounds and to cure internal hemorrhage. The true Matico is Piper angustifolium. It's in the pepper family, actually, the black pepper family, not the chili pepper family. But, I mean, you're seeing Eupatoriums are useful, and there are a lot of them. So there's one more she mentions that's really interesting. And it's one you probably have heard of, but you will have heard of it as a different name. She says, attention has been drawn of late to another South American species, Eupatorium redbaudiana, a tiny shrub native to the highlands of Paraguay, called by the Indians sweet herb, a few leaves being said to be sufficient to sweeten a strong cup of coffee or tea, also giving a pleasant aromatic flavor. It would seem worthwhile to cultivate this species here for experiment, since it has been called the sugar plant of South America, and probably proving easy of cultivation, might as a paying crop be a successful rival to the sugar beet. Any idea what that plant is? You know it as stevia. I don't believe it is still considered to be a Eupatorium. I think the taxonomists have found, a little genetic difference that puts it in a different category. I may be wrong. I don't use stevia. Every now and then I taste it, but it's not my thing. But that's how important and almost ubiquitous the eupatoriums are. That they've been everything from bone set to stevia, the sugar substitute. So, as Ms. Grieve mentioned, the eupatoriums are important herbal medicine. Bone set, for instance, as I've said, is an antiviral and helps with high fevers. Dog fennel is a much less known variety. In fact, it's generally considered a weed and usually labeled as poisonous. But, and I'm sure you wouldn't want to eat a lot of it. But let's talk about the herbal uses. Um, the Lumbee tribe of North Carolina, folks I grew up in and around and am somewhat related to in several ways, use dog fennel to treat a fever, just like you would another eupatorium. It was a root tea. I don't know how strong or how much they used. Use caution. The leaves and stems were boiled down in water, and one Lumbee healer has stated that some root workers or conjurers would put a drop or two of this tea in an individual's drink to make the unsuspected person, quote, do whatever they wanted to. Now, I got to put a big old caveat on this. In eastern North Carolina, in the swamps, especially around Robeson County, Bladen County, Columbus County, probably Scotland County, well, maybe, yeah, probably, yes. Definitely, definitely up around Rayford, and moving east, really into the swamps, Brunswick County and such. Crusoe Island would have been one of the main places. There is an old tradition of what are called root workers or root women. Basically voodoo, okay? We had a large influx of folks, including some of my ancestors, from the Caribbean during the revolts on the sugar plantations in the 1600s. That's how my Creole ancestors came into the country. If you think Creole, you're thinking New Orleans, or the islands, and you're understanding voodoo and witch doctors. Most people may not realize this. Most people might think this is a little far-fetched, but there have traditionally been in the mountains what they called witch women or granny women who would do some kind of incantation, heal somebody, or do a love potion, or put a hex on somebody. Totally different, actually, tradition. Much more Celtic. And the eastern part, it's that mix of African and Creole French and Native American. And some of those, my grandparents would have told you that there was a root woman that you could turn to when all else failed, who could heal uncurable diseases, could put a curse on someone, or could even do an incantation, and if you were going to go to jail and you had to go up before a judge, the judge would rule in your favor. It was a last resort. You may think it's superstition, but they swore by it. And some of these people were very, very respected and somewhat terrifying, actually. So, actually, this is something I do have experience with. Now, in modern times, you may be familiar with Wicca and this, neo-pagan version of witchcraft. To me, that's just a bunch of bunk. Sorry. I mean, if you're into that, but not my thing. I'm a Christian. I'm a Catholic. I don't dabble with that. As a Catholic, I wouldn't go to a root woman, but or a witch woman or anything. But I definitely do have a great deal of respect for the herbal knowledge that they have passed down generation after generation. Now, one thing witches do, I know Wiccans will get upset and offended when I say this. Remember, I think you're full of crap. I don't even think you're a real witch. But actual witches, so let me just go and offend you right away. Actual witches, part of putting a spell on someone, making them go under your influence, often included spiking their drink or somehow otherwise slipping them a hallucinogen. Yeah, something ergot fungus, which is like LSD, darnel, which is a psychedelic, almost like it grows among wheat. It was actually in the Bible where they talk about the wheat and the tares, and they had to be separated out. That was darnel. It will give you visions of demons and such. It could be something made from morning glory seeds. This could be something made from mushrooms. It could be something made from, a lot of times it was Jimson weed, especially in North America. Jimson weed was very much used to make people think they were flying or they were being haunted or whatever. That's really, quite illegal to do that to somebody, quite manipulative. They would use certain herbs to, scare a person or to break their will. You've heard about the stories of zombies and such. Well, that was probably somebody who was drugged and in a very suggestible state. Very evil to do that. I mean, there's nothing good about that. So, when the Lumbees, who still have their root women back in the swamps, say that a root worker would put a little bit of dog fennel into someone's drink to make them do whatever they wanted to, that meant they would obey every command of the root worker. So, just turning to a Lumbee herbal, a very good herbal book from this tribe, says one Lumbee herbalist shared that these evildoers use dog fennel for this purpose with caution because the taste of this herb is considered very bitter. One particular healer suggested to men that they smear, this is another odd, okay, I'm just going to put this with a grain of salt, in the Lumbee tradition, said if you smear the penis with a decoction of dog fennel, it would help you keep a stiff erection. So, I have no idea on that one either. So, just with a grain of salt, when you get into a lot of Native American traditions, you may think this sounds pretty crazy, and you're thinking, boy, those Lums are nuts. That's what we, Lumbee call themselves Lum, by the way. And having grown up around there, and I tend to say Lum. I don't mean any offense by it. If you think that's weird, pick up some of the old Cherokee herbals and look at some of the remedies for people who dream of snakes. That's one a lot. Yeah, they have there's some sickness supposedly caused by someone who dreams of snakes. And you take an herbal tea, and there's an incantation about the man from the north and some turtle, and it can, there's a lot of, whether you want to call it superstition or ancient, legit pagan tradition that gets passed down along with the herbal medicine in the Native American tradition. So I'm just putting that out there because obviously I don't have a lot of information from European sources on a Native American plant called dog fennel. However, Plants for a Future does say of dog fennel medicinal uses, the entire plant is applied externally as a remedy for the bites of reptiles and insects. Okay, that is dog fennel, but more than that, and I think of all these euphorbias, all of these eupatoriums, dog fennel is probably the one I'm going to use the least. That said, it grows everywhere, and it's good to know it. But the more important point is, get to know this family of plants. There are many of them. They are basically ubiquitous, and they need to be in your herbal first aid cabinet. You need to be able to identify and use these plants. So anyway, y'all, that is it. We'll go ahead and wrap this one up. hopefully I've given you maybe a few more weeds you can look for, and, and some of them are good edibles, and all of them are good medicinals. But yeah, really do spend some time getting to know your eupatoriums. They're going to be just essential. These are going to be, what we would call a plant ally for just about anyone, but especially in this era of who knows when the next pandemic's going to be released from a lab somewhere. We need antivirals, and we need things that will stop that high fever and that cytokine storm. And I mean, anything that falls, keep the lungs open and not congested. Anything that falls into those categories. Lymphatics, things that will help purge the lymph, get that virus out of your system, especially the dead virus, the shed virus. You need to be making a list of these. And this is, I always say learn in the winter what you're going to do in the summer. Well, in this case, learn what you're going to do in the spring. Learn about these plants. Start making a list. And in, another month, month and a half, 2 months, depending on where you live, they're going to start coming up. Start identifying them. Get that field guide. Get Botany in a Day. Get the Peterson Field Guide. Audubon, whatever. One from your local university is usually fantastic for your region. If your local university has a botany or agriculture department, they do publications. I actually have the best for me come from the University of Georgia, though occasionally I get a very good one out of Tennessee, over at Knoxville, or from Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Really good regional field guides. Definitely get those. Get a good plant app. There's some really good ones out there. iNaturalist, I think, is the one I use most often. But start identifying these plants and start learning how to use them. Because, like Ray Higgs used to tell me, there's going to come a time when you're going to need this information. And the time to learn it is now. Always time to learn. They always say, what does they always say about when's the best time to plant a garden? And it was always last year, so everything's done when you're ready to get started this year. Don't put off. Get started. So anyway, y'all have a great day. Go enjoy a good bowl of chicken soup or something, and I'll talk to you next time.
The information in this podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat any disease or condition. Nothing I say or write has been evaluated or approved by the FDA. I'm not a doctor. The U.S. government does not recognize the practice of herbal medicine, and there is no governing body regulating herbalists. Therefore, I'm really just a guy who studies herbs. I'm not offering any advice. I won't even claim that anything I write or say is accurate or true. I can tell you what herbs have been traditionally used for. I can tell you my own experience and if I believe an herb has helped me. I cannot nor would I tell you to do the same. If you use an herb anyone recommends, you are treating yourself. You take full responsibility for your health. Humans are individuals and no two are identical. What works for me may not work for you. You may have an allergy, a sensitivity, an underlying condition that no one else even shares and you don't even know about. Be careful with your health. By continuing to listen to my podcast or read my blog, you agree to be responsible for yourself, do your own research, make your own choices, and not to blame me for anything ever.